12-year-old Jamie had only meant to grab his grandfather's old telescope from the attic. It was a dusty, forgotten space, filled with cardboard boxes and the ghosts of old memories. As he shifted a heavy trunk, his hand brushed against a crooked drawer in an old wooden desk. He tugged it open, and there, beneath a thick layer of dust, something was glowing. It was a strange parchment, rolled up and tied with a faded ribbon. Curiosity, as it always does. The moment Jamie unrolled it, the attic disappeared. The parchment wasn't just paper. It was a map of America, and it was alive. Mountains shimmered, rising and falling like they were breathing. Rivers snaked across the vellum, twisting and turning as if they were alive and searching for the sea. The borders between states pulsed with a soft, warm light, like faint memories flickering in the dark. Jamie leaned closer, his breath catching in his throat. Then, something impossible happened. A tiny figure no bigger than his thumb and made entirely of ink stepped right off the map's surface. It bowed deeply and introduced itself with a voice that sounded like rustling pages. "I am Ink," it said, "guardian of the stories locked within this land's lines." Before Jamie could even process what was happening, Ink reached out a tiny hand. A gust of swirling color erupted from the parchment, pulling Jamie straight into the map. He didn't fall. He floated, landing gently in a vast, green forest. The air was crisp and smelled of pine and damper. He saw deer moving gracefully through the trees, and down by a shimmering river, canoes glided silently across the water. Bustling villages of indigenous nations dotted the landscape. These were the first people who had lived on this land for thousands of years, shaping it with their knowledge, their trade routes, and their sacred traditions. Ink stood beside him, explaining how every mountain and river had a story, a name, a purpose given to it by the people who knew it best. The land wasn't empty. It was a home rich with culture and history long before any other ships arrived. Then, in a blink, the forest dissolved. The scent of pine was replaced by the salt spray of the Atlantic Ocean. Jamie found himself standing on the trembling deck of an early European ship. The roar of the waves was deafening, and the faces of the people around him were a mixture of hope, fear, and ambition. They were sailing toward a new world, carrying dreams of freedom and fortune, but also bringing consequences they could barely comprehend. On the shore, Jamie saw the indigenous people watching. He felt their curiosity, their caution, and their struggle as they negotiated, resisted, and tried to survive the tidal wave of change that was about to crash upon their world. Ink whisked Jamie forward, and the decades flew by like pages in a book. He saw colonies rising along the coast, small towns growing into bustling cities. He heard the passionate arguments echoing in town squares and assembly halls, debates about freedom, rights, and what it meant to govern oneself. These arguments erupted into the fires of revolution. He watched as a new country was born, its birth announcement a promise of liberty for all. Yet, even as the ink dried on the Declaration of Independence, a deep and terrible contradiction lay at its heart. The scene shifted, and the air grew thick with the brutal reality of slavery. Ink showed him the profound division it carved through the nation morally, culturally, and politically. Jamie felt the immense weight of this injustice, the pain and suffering that built the nation's wealth while tearing at its soul. This contradiction wasn't a footnote. It was a central, defining struggle. And that struggle led to war. Jamie stood amidst the smoke and chaos of the Civil War. He heard voices calling for unity, others crying out for justice, and many just pleading for survival. He watched as the nation tore itself apart, brother fighting brother, and then, slowly and painfully, began the long process of stitching itself back together. It was a scar that would never fully fade, a reminder of the cost of division and the ongoing fight for freedom. Before he could catch his breath, the map shifted again. The roar of cannons was replaced by the thunder of trains racing across the Great Plains, their iron tracks connecting a continent. He stood on the bustling streets of New York and San Francisco, watching immigrants from every corner of the world step onto American soil. They came with little more than the clothes on their backs and a fierce determination to build a new life. Factories churned out new inventions, farmers tamed the prairies, and innovators reached for seemingly impossible ideas. From the heart of these diverse communities, new sounds were born. Jamie heard the raw emotion of the blues from the Mississippi Delta, the improvisational energy of jazz in New Orleans, the storytelling of country, music from the Appalachians, and the rebellious spirit of rock and roll that would sweep the globe. Each note, each rhythm, was another thread woven into the nation's cultural fabric, a soundtrack to its struggles and its triumphs. The scene morphed once more. The music of celebration gave way to the chants of protest. Jamie was in the midst of marches for civil rights, surrounded by people demanding an end to segregation and inequality. He saw women raising their voices, demanding the right to vote and to control their own destinies. He watched workers on picket lines, fighting for fair wages and safe conditions. In every era, he saw communities pushing back against injustice, redrawing the moral lines of the nation. Ink leaned in and whispered, America was never shaped by one story, but by millions of them, constantly overlapping, arguing, harmonizing, and evolving. Finally, the map flung him into modern times. Skyscrapers scraped the sky, a testament to human ingenuity. Scientists and engineers were building a new digital world, connecting people in ways never before imaginable. He saw people from every background, every faith, every corner of the earth, all striving, disagreeing, creating, and dreaming side by side. It was messy, it was loud, it was complicated, but it was alive. With a quiet thud, the parchment curled in on itself, pulling Jamie back into the dusty attic. He was breathless, his heart pounding. The world around him was the same, but he was different. He looked down at the map, now lying still on the floor, but it wasn't completely still. A single, fresh line of glowing ink was appearing on its surface, writing out a final message. It read, America is a story still being written, and every generation holds the pen. Jamie gently rolled up the map. He understood now. He wasn't just a spectator to history. He wasn't just reading a story that was already finished. He was a part of its next chapter, and it was his turn, and our turn, to write it. Thanks for watching. If this story sparked something in you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of America's story means the most to you?